Hey everyone, it's Mallory here with All About Cats, and over here is my cat Wessie, and in this week's video we're going to be telling you more about pretty litter. So since I first covered pretty litter back in the summer of 2020, a couple of things have changed. So the product itself remains the same, it works in the same way, but the way that it's sold is a little bit different. I'll detail that in a second. And also I've changed a bit, or at least my impressions of pretty litter have changed a little bit. So over the last couple of years, while it's not my daily driver, pretty litter has shown up in my cat's litter boxes more than once, and I've had the chance to think about it a little more, and I have some observations that I wanted to share in addition to what was covered in our original 2020 review. So if you want to check that out, I'll put a link in the cards and in the description so you can see the original review. With that out of the way, let's get on into the review. So if you're not familiar, Pretty Litter is a silica gel crystal cat litter. So this is a type of cat litter that uses these adsorbent crystals. You might be familiar with silica gel as a desiccant in those do not eat packets that you'll find in shoes and bags of jerky, right? It is a non-toxic substance. The do not eat refers to a choking hazard, not toxicity. It's completely safe for cats, and it has this interesting ability to absorb moisture. So water gets locked into these little pores on the surface of the granule, and it just stays there until enough water gets into all of those pores, and then it'll reach a saturation point, and then it'll start losing water. And so in a litter box, this means that for typically about 30 days for one cat, it's going to hold in all of that moisture, it's going to suck it out of the feces, it's going to make the urine basically go away. And this will last for about 30 days. And then after about 30 days for one cat, you'll reach that saturation point, and then you'll end up with a kind of moist litter box. So on top of being a low maintenance silica gel litter, Pretty Litter adds in a patented technology that allows it to change color when it comes into contact with your cat's urine. And so this means that in addition to just being able to monitor what's happening in your cat's litter box, looking at the clumps, you're able to get visual insights into your cat's health. This makes it a really interesting product, but how does it actually work? When you purchase Pretty Litter, it's going to come in this surprisingly lightweight bag. So a 1 month supply is only going to weigh 6 pounds, so it's really easy to carry. And then obviously you're going to pour it into your litter box. So one bag purchased off of the Pretty Litter website is supposed to last one cat for 1 month. So you pour it in, you fill up your litter box to a depth of about 2 inches, and then you're good to go for the month. In my experience, that one bag supply is not enough for my litter box. So one bag of Pretty Litter is intended to fill a 12 by 16 inch litter box to a 2-inch depth. But I found that using, for instance, my top recommended Cat litter box, it took an entire 8 pounds to fill that up. So about 1.5 typical bags. During this pouring process, I also observed that the litter is quite dusty. So while it's supposed to be a lower dust solution, I find that Pretty Litter is quite dusty. And I also find that it generates a little plume of dust when I'm scooping it too. So it's not just when you're pouring it in, it's just overall a pretty dusty litter. It's worth noting though that this dust is ironically not crystalline silica dust, which is that dust that is known to be carcinogenic. In fact, it is an amorphous silica dust, and amorphous silica dust is not known to have those detrimental effects. So, in theory, it should be safer than the type of dust that's coming out of a clay cat litter, which is that crystalline silica dust. So once I had the litter in my box, again, I had to use a little bit more to fill up my large litter box. It was time for my cats to use it. Now, in my original test, I found that my cats were comfortable with the Pretty Litter, that they liked it better than a larger crystal cat litter. However, while they do prefer it to other crystal cat litters, they definitely don't prefer it to clay cat litter. So when I've had a lot of different cat litter products side by side, my cats will consistently gravitate towards the clay cat litter, and they'll avoid the Pretty Litter. If they have an alternative, they won't use the Pretty Litter. This really depends on your cat's personality and what they're used to. I've read about a lot of cats who like pretty litter a lot, but just in my experience, it's not a feline favorite. There's no reason why it shouldn't be. The crystals are very lightweight, very fine. They should feel quite nice and sandy under your cat's paws. They'll sink into it a little bit more than a clay litter, but it's overall should be a perfectly comfortable, diggable, nice substrate for your cat to use. Now, I will note that that lightness makes the litter a little bit more prone to track and scatter, so my cats can dig in it really easily, but they're also throwing it out of the litter box. So it'll go flying out of the litter box. It'll be tracked across the house on the cat's paws. I've heard about people who are finding it in their beds, across the house. Pretty litter scatters and tracks quite a bit. So if that's something you want to avoid, always pair it with a good litter mat and prepare yourself for some vacuuming and sweeping around the litter box. So moving on to odor control, I found that pretty litter works well to control odors for about, in my experience, 10 days with 2 cats. So that would add up to maybe about 20 days with 1 cat, so roughly 3 weeks. And after that time, it starts getting close to that saturation point. You start getting a little bit of dampness in the litter box, and you're going to find that the odor is just not well contained. And I find that it has a unique and pretty unpleasant smell. So pretty litter can kind of go from 0 to 100 in terms of odor. And I've consistently noticed this time and time again when using it. So while overall I think the odor control is good, you need to properly manage your litter box in order to make sure that it stays good. So you're changing it out, you're stirring it every day, you're making sure to distribute the urine so that you aren't getting any saturation and you aren't getting a sudden blast of that smell. It's a pretty low maintenance solution, and I do find that it's a bit less taxing on the body overall, right? So if you want to avoid any sort of prying, scraping, carrying around heavy bags of litter, well, you're going to be pleased with pretty litter. It's a much less fatiguing litter box experience compared to your typical clay cat litter. The other thing to consider when we're looking at the convenience factor here is that Pretty Litter is available through a subscription. So if you go to the Pretty Litter website, you're going to be able to set up a monthly recurring subscription, which is going to send out a monthly supply customized depending on how many cats you have. So if you have 3 cats, they'll send you 3 bags every single month, and that'll just be shipped to your doorstep. You don't have to worry about restocking cat litter. So this can certainly add to the convenience factor. Now, somewhat recently, Pretty Litter has become available in stores. So I purchased my last bag in Walmart, which I found to be pretty convenient as well. So it's nice to have a couple of different options on how to purchase. And the last aspect to Pretty Litter that I want to cover is, of course, that health monitoring function. How does that work? So again, the technology used in Pretty Litter is patented. It is intended to measure health markers in the urine of mammals. And the patent actually refers to a lot of different measurements that aren't really being promised by Pretty Litter. And while the product that is being used is proprietary and we don't really know what it is or how it works, even if you're reading the patent, we do know that the focus seems to be on pH. So Pretty Litter is using your cat's urine pH in order to change color. And I did a test of this using a few different solutions of baking soda and water, plain water and vinegar. And so I was able to see that indeed the litter would change colors. You would see kind of a light green for water with a pH of roughly 7, which is a little bit more alkaline than your cat's urine should be. The baking soda solution produced a blue shade, and then the vinegar solution was more on the orange side. And so in your cat's litter box, that's going to translate to normal, which is a little bit more yellow than the water, right? Because your cat's urine is a little bit more acidic. Or you're going to see high acidity, which could be indicative of something like metabolic acidosis. And then you have more alkaline urine, which is going to indicate maybe a urinary tract infection or struvite crystals, issues that should warrant a vet visit. It's also able to highlight the presence of blood in the urine, which again could indicate a wide range of issues, all of which will justify a trip to the vet. So my experience using Pretty Litter multiple times over the years, I've never seen anything that prompted concern. So my cat's urine is always somewhere between the yellow side and a little bit veering towards olive green. But I will note that the first time I used Pretty Litter, it got kind of saturated. I used it longer than I should have. I was trying to go the entire month, and it got saturated and it became kind of green. It's not a false positive exactly. What's happening is that there's just too much in there. And when there's too much urine in there, it tends to change this color. So as long as you're stirring it regularly and changing it at an appropriate frequency for your household, then it shouldn't be changing to an abnormal color and giving that so-called false positive. Now, is this health monitoring functionality worth it? So it could be. It really depends on what's going on in your cat's body. Some issues could cause some fluctuation in urine pH, and they never would show up in any other way, either in your cat's litter box or in their behavior. And so the Pretty Litter would allow you to catch that. However, Pretty Litter is not a diagnostic tool, and it doesn't tell you that much more than you would be able to get from just monitoring your cat's litter box. So think of a typical litter box filled with clumping clay litter. You're scooping it on a daily basis. You're seeing the size of the clumps. You can even count the number of clumps that are in there. You're able to monitor your cat's litter box activity pretty well just using a clumping clay. On the other hand, Pretty Litter is absorbent. You're oftentimes not seeing the size of the clumps because they kind of disappear in there. And you're not getting as good a sense of what your cat is doing in terms of urination. So you're getting the colors, but you're giving up the clumps. But of course, this brings us to the question of whether or not it's actually going to be worth it. And that's going to really depend on who you are and how much you're willing to spend on cat litter. And I will note that Pretty Litter is quite expensive. How expensive it is, though, depends on who you are, how you're using it, and where you're buying it. So there are two ways to buy Pretty Litter. One is through the Pretty Litter website, and there it's going to cost between $20 and $22 per bag, depending on how many you're buying per month. And then you can also purchase it through store. Now, I found that the in-store price tends to be a little bit lower, so about $3.18 per pound. Whereas the cost from the Pretty Litter website tends to look a little bit closer to $3.30 to $3.67 per pound. So it tends to be a little bit cheaper if you're buying it in a retail store. But regardless, this price is significantly more than we're seeing in a lot of other cat litters, including other lightweight and silica gel products. Remember that your cost per month is going to go up a little bit higher if you're using more of it. So for instance, in a home like mine, where we're using about 10 pounds a month, well, it's going to be about $33 a month per cat. Compared to $5 per month if you're using a cheap clay cat litter, looks pretty expensive. Again, Pretty Litter does some really interesting things. It offers outstanding convenience. It offers good odor control. It is able to tell you things about your cat's health that you never otherwise would have known. So for some people, that's certainly going to be worth it, especially those with cats who have recurring or chronic conditions. It can be extremely helpful. So if you're in that kind of position, you really want to know more about your cat's health and you want to get away from the frustrations of clay cat litter, Pretty Litter was certainly worth a try. Remember that you can get your money back if you are not satisfied within 30 days. So they have a 100% money back guarantee. So that kind of gives you a little bit of security when ordering. That's about it for my review of Pretty Litter. I hope this gave you some perspective on how it works and whether or not it's going to be worth it for you. Let me know in the comments if you have any experience using Pretty Litter, if you've ever used it to identify some sort of health issue your cat was dealing with, or any other observations on this product. Now, before I sign off, I want to mention our pre-order promotion. So you might remember from my last video that we have published our first ever ebook, which is called The Art of Raising a Kitten. It details everything you need to know about taking care of a new kitten. and it's currently available on Amazon for pre-order. The book itself costs $9.99, and $5 of every sale is donated to the Every Cat Health Foundation. So when you pre-order, $5 of the purchase will be donated to help with feline health research and help to advance veterinary medicine for cats. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description and you'll be able to place that pre-order if you're interested. It becomes live and you'll receive your book on August 8th, which is International Cat Day. So mark your calendars, and thank you so much for your support. Regardless of if you purchase the book or not, I really appreciate that you're here. So yeah, see you next week. Bye.